This will be my first video. I'd just like to start off saying thank you for clicking on my video and watching. Today I will be doing some embroidery, and by some embroidery I mean finishing up a little bit. There's a little bit of story on why I started this specific design, but I'll be getting into that a little bit later, like as I do it. I'd like to try and finish up the vine work that is behind the skull. Uh, just because I don't feel comfortable doing the satin stitch on the skull. I tend to mess that one up a bit, so I'd rather not have to edit this video that much. Alright, I'll get the camera set up so that you guys can see my little workstation. Alright, everybody, I've got some basic tools here, and I've got my little sharps over there. I'll be bringing them over here in a second. But I'm mostly going to be working with the green embroidery today, and I've already sectioned off a tiny little amount to be able to use. I'm just going to walk through that. And if there's anybody that watches this video that does embroidery, I mean, I would love some tips and hints. I'm all about like sharing the art form. I said I'd get into the story of why I decided to do this specific design. And honestly, it's a fairly simple story. My mom and I went to the mall together, and we thought, you know what? We'll do a little window shopping, maybe a little bit of actual clothes shopping. I'm not going to name any store names because, new channel, don't want to get in trouble, especially on the very first video. That'd just be truly bad luck. But we're walking through, and I saw a really cute shirt in the window, and so I walk in, and my mom follows. And the clothes in there were really nice. I mean, they had stuff in my size and everything. I mean, they had, like, my style, too. And they had some clothes that, were in my mom's size and that were in her style. Well, we found a shirt that she absolutely loved. I mean, it looked very similar to this shirt I have right here. Pink, white stripes. I mean, it had the whole thing going on, So, I was super excited to be like, oh, hey, Mom, look. Found a shirt that I think you'll love. And next thing you know, she's like, oh my God, Amber, look at the front, though, because I'd just seen the back. It was across the store. And she decided that she wasn't going to get the shirt, despite the fact that it had embroidery on it. It had a skull and some roses, not this design. I'm not trying to rip anything off, but I did find this design online. Mostly because I'm not the artist in the family. I just do the sewing and the embroidery. Well, anyways, it had some skulls and roses on it. And that's one of her favorite things. And she showed me the price tag. And the price tag was ungodly. I mean, we're talking like $90 for a flannel shirt, which was exactly like this one. The only difference was I think the stripes were vertical on that one. And I couldn't see her spending that money, and she couldn't see herself spending that money. So, we just left the store, and I kept it in mind. And she's been looking for some bar stools to go on her bar, because when she was designing it and then was having it built, she didn't realize that she had it, I don't know, like 3 feet higher than it should be. So, we're going to, like, Salvation Armies, Project Rehabs, and all these places trying to find some bar stools that are, like, built for giants. Because otherwise, we ain't gonna have anywhere to sit on that bar, and it's just gonna be, like, a place where we store our cereal at this point. I'm gonna have to get me a second camera so that you can see what I'm doing a little more close up. But back to the story. We're walking through looking for bar stools, and, they have clothes there. And she glances over and she sees this shirt, pink and white, with stripes, flannel, beautiful button up, and she went, "Oh, that looks just like it. What are the chances that someone's had to return it and just donated it instead?" I was like, pretty low, and it was. It had no embroidery on it. But I reminded her, I can do embroidery. Why not just find a design online, boop, copy it down, and then embroider it? And I guess she had forgotten I can do this, because I really don't pull it out that often. But she was over the moon when she realized I actually could do it, including the roses. I'm actually very proud of those since, it was fairly hard to try and pick a design of the roses I wanted. I mean, there's many ways to do one thing, and that's true in embroidery as well. I managed to stab myself a little bit, so I had to, do that, and I decided to readjust the camera so you guys could, we could have a little conversation. A one-sided one, but, where was I? So, my mom realized I did do embroidery, and I finally decided on I think it's called the pinwheel rose, or maybe like a spiderweb rose, but it's nothing too complicated. Embroidery never is, once you get the hang of the basics. But we got this shirt in the end for, I think, $4, maybe $5. I mean, for super cheap. And then I already had some embroidery thread and needles and stuff lying around, so I had the supplies, had the means. So I started this design there a few weeks ago, and I've just been procrastinating on it. Which, if anybody knows me, that will not surprise you at all. I figured this would be a great opportunity to get a little bit of my hobby work done, and also just get some plain old homework done. Oh, by the way, she never did find those bar stools. About a minute before we walked in, a lady had bought the last set of bar stools, and they had some beautiful leather upholstery on them. That was an overall fun trip. I'm not hardcore into the embroidery. It is definitely just a hobby. But if I can keep my mom from having to pay, $90 for a flannel shirt with a little bit of embroidery. I mean, don't get me wrong. It was a beautiful shirt, and the embroidery was nice on it and everything, but it's like mass produced. And the embroidery was like this large on it. It was like a little skull, little roses. So this thing's like almost twice, 3 times the size of what they had. And I'm trying to make it like as small stitch as possible. That way it actually looks good and will hold up well when she washes it. And during all that talking, I only stabbed myself once and finished the first vine. I've got some leaves and stuff I've got to do as well. And ignore his crooked little grin, I'm going to have to fix that. The marker started to run on me there last second, and I was like, you gotta be joking. This is what the back looks like. This is what I meant by, like, small stitch, clean lines and everything. I mean, you don't want to have it popped up too much, because this will be, like, it's meant to be worn. It's not just a decorative embroidery piece. So, I'm trying to keep, like, all the stitches as minimal as possible. And I'm trying to keep from, like, starting over here and then, like, jumping up here and having one giant line across the entire thing. Just keeps it a little neater, a little more organized. You know how it is. If any of you have ever embroidered, you know how difficult it is to try and keep all of your lines, like, going exactly where you want them. And if you don't embroider, which I know the first few people who watch this are going to have like not a clue and might not even make it this far in the video. But the key to having like very nice, neat embroidery, which I'm not saying I'm no pro, I do decent work. I'm amateur at best. But I do know the basics on how to make a good piece of embroidery. You want to try and keep all of your stitches as small as possible while also covering the most space. And you also don't want to pull your needle through your thread while talking about it. That might help a little bit. Oh well, you learn from your mistakes. Thankfully, it didn't go all the way through, otherwise, I would have been struggling with the threader again. I'm doing a little technique. I can't remember exactly what it's called. I think it's just called like a back stitch. It's where you go up through the fabric and then you backtrack and you put it like slightly under the last piece uh, of thread that you had stitched. Don't know if the camera will pick up on it, but you poke it through the fabric. There you go. I think you guys can see it's right there below the rose beside the mouth. You go up and out, and then what you do is really simple. You just go back and lay it down like right beside it and slightly behind, and maybe a little bit underneath that last thread so that it tucks up under it. And that gives you some really nice line work, so that it's not too like jaggedy, I guess is the correct word. I'm trying to leave the leaves and a few things jaggedy. I mean, it is roses. They have thorns, so if the leaves have little spikes and like you see those, the leaves have little spikes all over them and everything. And then I plan on going over all of the vines like I did this top one. This top one is actually, I went up it once with a backstitch and then went straight down right beside it with a backstitch. And it gives it a very interesting look. It almost looks braided when you do it like that. And it just helps the vines to stand out a little bit more from like the skull and the flowers. I mean, at least I think it does. And if I can find where I got the design from, I'll also link it since I'm thinking about like what it looks like. I altered it minorly. It had thorns all over it. And it's like, I ain't gonna put like 1,000 little thorns on this thing. I don't want to be here for like 2 years procrastinating, trying to get this thing done. I'd at least like it to be done in time for my mom to wear it for spring. Because I just looked at the date. I might have it done by Valentine's Day, actually. Although I was originally thinking, with all the flowers and everything, and the bright pink, it'd be good for Easter. Honestly, Valentine's Day would probably suit it way better. This may be what I give to her then. Simply because I think she'd, I mean, she knows I'm making it for her, but she doesn't know when I'm going to be finished with it. So, I'm thinking Valentine's Day. Now, I don't want to, this is like my first vine that's like long outside of the one that's like right here beside the leaf. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it a little bit wider there at the bottom like an actual vine would be, and then leave the tip of it here real thin. So I'm starting my stitch about halfway down, quarter way down. Yeah, halfway down, I'd say. Just so it can give that illusion that it's a little more like a vine. I figure by the time I'm ready to make another video, I'll just do like a quick little Stardew Valley video. Because by the time I have another video ready to up and go, the shirt should be finished. So if anybody watches and has any suggestions on what I should embroider next,
I mean, I'm completely open to suggestions. Do remember, though, amateur. But the best way to learn is the advice of others and just good old practice. So, completely open to suggestions is all I'm saying. I managed to blend that vine pretty well. Did slightly disconnect from the main vine, the little offshoot did, so I'm just adding a extra little stitch right over it. I figure I'm going to have to get me a high def camera and set it up like right here in front of me so that you got my pretty face here on one, and then you got the actual embroidery work because this camera does not focus as well as I'd hoped it would. But that's a problem for later me. Right now, I'm just pleased that I got it up and working because it was giving me a little bit of difficulty there to start with. And that's one of the main reasons I decided not to do a live stream. Was simply because camera and the audio and everything, it's like it was working great one minute, sucked the next, so videos until I can get it working out flawlessly. Well, then and also when my Wi-Fi can keep up, which, less of a chance of that happening. I find embroidery really relaxing. I mean, you're stabbing something, technically, but it's relaxing and it's an art form. And they say that's one of the best ways to get through your emotions. And don't tell me I managed to do a French knot unintentionally. That would be horrible. Well, I don't know if you guys can see that, but I managed to tie a knot halfway through it. It happens. Sometimes you can just pull them and they'll come apart, and then sometimes you actually got to take the needle and pick them apart. And it would appear I got the lucky draw and get to try and pick it apart. Looks like I got it. I'm just twisting it now. Well, I was just talking about how peaceful and relaxing this is, and it goes and shows me wrong, because it can get annoying at times, but I don't know a person who does art in some form or another that doesn't get annoyed with it eventually. And I'm on my very last stitch. Took a little longer than I wanted to because of that French knot that I accidentally pulled through. But there it is. Now, let's see. It's this one right here that I just did. And as you can see, the roses are actually popped up quite a bit with the style I did. I wanted them to be a little more. I just wanted them to stand out a little bit more. And they were meant to be all red roses, but on the pink fabric it just didn't work out the way I was liking it or wanted it to. So I decided to throw in some blue. I'm tying a few knots here on the back. Some people can just pull it through and then call it a day. But like I said, I want this to be extra sturdy since someone's going to be wearing it. And I like the number 3. So I do 3 knots typically. Unless it seems like it's real fragile and it needs a little extra. Thankfully this one did not. Well, I know it was a bit of a slow video and embroidery is not for everybody, but regardless, I sincerely hope anybody who watches this video enjoyed it at least a tiny amount. And here's my progress so far. I'll probably work on it a little bit more here after I get the camera off. But I mean, I've been recording for like ever at this point, just rambling. So, I'll leave it there.